What's up, guys? This is the non-podcast podcast. Okay, I don't have a podcast, but it's like turning into one, and I'm getting frustrated because I just want to interview the people that I care about and bring them to you so you guys can appreciate them as much as I can. This is my good friend TruthSeekah. He is my favorite rapper. He is an esoteric. He's an esoteric rapper. He's a Christian mystic, and he's just an overall great guy. So I want to introduce. Some of you guys already know who he is. I gotta tell you, Truth. One of the things that really impressed me, okay, is that what you can do in a 6-minute song takes me 260 pages to write, but you condense it into a 6-minute song. So, like, how do you go about? Because the way you weave words it's not even weaving words like Eminem does. It's not even like syllables. You take esoteric freaking substance and you make it bend into other esoteric substances. Do you have like take me through, like, I'm sure at this point you've got like a process of writing. So how does that usually work?
Yeah, so I mean, I've done. First of all, thanks for having me. You're one of my favorite people too. So, thank you. Um, I've talked about this a lot, and I simply say, taking really deep esoteric concepts and make them sound simple, nonchalant, right? Oh yeah, and we're talking about the Kabbalion. We're talking about manifestation and the process of that, whatever, astrology, whatever. Taking these really deep concepts and making them nonchalant, really simple. But then on the back end is to take something really simple and make it sound really deep and esoteric, because everything is, right? Once you know how deep things go, then one word, right? One scripture that's just like, what does something that you said that always stands up to me now? The Bible says that the pride cometh before a fall, and it's a great proverb. But you're like, yeah, but if you know that pride is, pride of lions and Leo, and it comes before a fall. So there's a whole nother level in something that's just like a proverb. Hey, be a good person. Don't get prideful because you're gonna fall. So everything has these multiple meanings, and they all tie together for me in my head, especially from the Christian aspect, right, of studying the Bible so much and practicing the spirituality and the theology therein. And then you begin to learn the deeper things. You're like, hey, that's talking about that, or it could be talking about that, right? So the vocabulary for me begins to open up to rhyming words, to one thing that leads to another. I've studied so much that it's hard to like just say this is the only way, which is what Christians do. It's only this, it's only that. No.
Right.
It's only this and that and this and that together cohesively at the same time. So artistically writing that, man, it took my art to another level, because I started out as a Christian rapper. And so yeah, you're limited. You're like, every song has to be about this or whatever. And so I just begin to have more words, a bigger vocabulary to talk about astrotheology, to talk about angels. But once you start studying angelology and the angels in the Bible and the angels in the books taken out of the Bible or whatever, now your vocabulary expands, your knowledge expands, and reading and stuff. But they all tie back into a certain thing, and once we go there, that opens up to more. And that's once we go here, this opens up to more. So there really are these wheels that are within wheels that they all connect, but they all touch, and we just kind of jump from one to one, and they're all cohesive. They, in my mind and in my heart, they all go together. Interviewing over 500 people on my podcast, reading all of these books, we're saying the same things universally, just using different words and terminologies, and I love all of it.
It's beautiful, man. I always explain it like this. If you never studied physics, or you're not a physics teacher, or you've never studied physics, you can't think like that. Whereas some physics teachers, all they think about is numbers and equations, trying to get to some deeper truth.
Yeah.
So it's called syncretism is what we do, is we go into 50, 70, 80 different esoteric sciences and just basically lay down and just let it just come to you and just read and read and read and just understand and just everything builds and you're like, oh, that's where it fits in. Yeah, everything fits in too, man. It's
It
absolutely
doesn't
crazy.
stop. You
One of
think
the
you get to a place where like, yeah, everything I've learned, I know all the esoteric. No, no, no. It doesn't stop.
No, it
It
doesn't stop.
doesn't stop.
One of my favorite things about you, and I'm going to give you credit to it because you're the one that literally did it. When I first came on your show, I was talking about astrotheology, and maybe I go deeper than a lot of people with it that are out there. But, you know, I teach for Santos. Me and Jordan, because of you, became friends, Jordan Maxwell. I sent Bill Donahue a video of my work, and I recorded a video on it. I read his email out loud. You know, I'm very good at it, and it's what I love to do, connecting things. But when I first came on your show, I was like, this is what it is. And you turned to me and you're like, nah, man, it's like so much more than just astrotheology. And it was because of you that I started expanding and understanding that it was at least 7 different sciences. And it just blew my mind because you knew about astrotheology. You call yourself a Christian mystic. Can you define what a Christian mystic is? Because you always talk about Christ. You always talk about that. But what you also do is you're into the esoteric, you know. And after that, I'm going to actually ask you how you got into all of this because I've heard your story, but I want other people to hear your story too. So if you could just explain to me what you see what is a Christian mystic?
Yeah. So I think the earliest Christians were mystics, to put it that way. But the idea for me of what a Christian mystic is, and I think it's a growing, you know, it's a growing movement to return back to something that Christianity left behind. And Christian mystic for me is a Christian as far as a modality, a relationship with God, with the divine kind of thing, and that came to me in my life through the person of Jesus, like this story of somebody who loves me, who, you know, doesn't keep a record of my wrong, and you know, it believes in me when nobody else believes in me, you know, these kind of things. And so Christianity and finding God, finding spirituality through Jesus in that regular story, right? Christian church. The mystical side is, the Christian mystic is really embracing the spiritual aspects of Christianity to begin with. But for me, it's like, it's not a lid to say that it just stops at this. Now we can look into some of the other things that maybe aren't in the Christian tradition. Most of the esoteric stuff is in there, and you know that as being a student. Like, most of the stuff is in there. Some of the stuff isn't, but it really is just to focus on the spiritual oneness with Christ. So a Christian mystic, somebody who's a devotee, a follower of the ways of Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua ben Yosef, and his disciples. You know, from that, no establishment, no Catholic Church, no Protestant church, not knocking, they got their places or whatever, but you know, trying to get back to what they had. And I think that's been my pursuit, and it's led me down many paths, and it's still my pursuit.
Because I see you online all the time praising Jesus or talking about Jesus, and then like 28 seconds later just basically shitting on Christians. It's so weird to see, but you got to explain where the split is in that.
Yeah, in my head, and I think the Bible, Christ is bigger than Christianity. You know, the Christ, the Christos, the anointing, the oil. We're breaking it down into the anatomy, the rising of the sacred secretion, right? Is that illuminates you. You become brighter, wider, more loving, more caring about your diet, caring about people. Like, this is the message of any Christ, any Messiah that has existed or will exist. And it's way deeper than Christianity. I say that just because of what Christianity has become. You know, what it was in its conception, versus what it's become, and it looks nothing like the biblical text that we read. And there's psyops everywhere, and it's definitely been a psyop to infiltrate religion. How else will you control someone without religion and government working hand in hand? But those stories are about liberation, are about essentially anti-government, like not overthrowing, but overthrowing it spiritually. It's like, yeah, we're in this world, but we don't answer to you. We answer to a higher calling, and just Jesus representing that and still represents that. So I think for me, like I thought that early on, like his story, whatever that is, that it happened and he came and changed things and made everything right. So now the churches are good, and now we got good people running the churches. But the mystery that's in there, and it's been there the whole time, nothing's changed. Like nothing in the story, his story really is our story. You know, so these are layers for you to experience and encounter, because at first the young TruthSeekah, the young Derek, desperate, needing a friend, needing a savior, needing something outside of myself, found it in Christ, and I read the Bible about him, and then I'm reading it now and I'm reading it about myself. But it's always been like that for me. It started early on. Like it didn't even take no long time. It was just like the reflective of reading these stories and be like, man, that whatever we call the Holy Spirit, consciousness or whatever, it's like communicating with me as I'm reading it. Like when I was 17, 18 years old, like reading it in these people, and I'm reading how the Israelites overcame them, and it's just like this inner dialogue, which Christians call the Holy Spirit. There's many different names for it, but it's like, that's you. This is where you were. This is where you're going. But in between, there's a giant, right? And it becomes real. And I'm not reading a history book. I'm not reading a book about King David that lived 6,000 years or however many thousand years ago. I'm reading about me today fighting my giants. And so that's the mystical side. You know, how many people miss that, you know? And that's something that's real, and that's for anybody. And it's a beautiful experience that I think that's one of the reasons why that text is shaped the way it is it's everything about you. Like it's your mind, it's your astrological sign, it's your consciousness, it's your fears. Everything's in there. If you believe it. If you don't believe it, if you think it's just a book of control and manipulation and it's only astrology, that's what you're going to get, and you'll find it. And it's hopefully it's something that can benefit you and help humanity, because it's in there. Very powerful book. Very powerful book. So I know I'm kind of ranting with that idea, but it's more.
While you're ranting, why don't you take us through your journey? Because you were kind of into the dark sciences for a little bit, right? And then you kind of came around. Do I have that? Yeah. Do I have that correct? Because I've heard your story a couple of times. Yeah. Joseph Campbell talks about the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. Jesus went through the hero's journey. Yeah. The sun in the zodiac, 12 signs went through this. The hero's journey of the sun, personified as Jesus Christ. Yeah. We all have the hero's journey, so I want to hear yours, and I want everyone to hear yours.
Yeah, man. Just starting out at an early age, like I said, at the age of 4. I had a shadow being experience. Woke up in the middle of the night, pinned down to my bed at 4 years old, and it scared me. So young. I don't have a lot of memories back then, but I remember that, and it kind of shaped me about, like, you know, the type of movies we'd rent as kids and teenagers, the type of stories we'd tell at the campfire and sleepovers, and I try to find a way to weave that in. That experience, just to ask someone if they've ever had it, because it's kind of in the back of your head. It's kind of scary. It's kind of weird. But then, like, hey, but when you're telling ghost stories, it's kind of like, hey, have you guys ever woke up with a being standing in your room or laying on top of you? And
you were 4?
Say it again.
You were 4
when it happened the first time, but then talking about it as a teenager. And then people would say, yeah, I had it happen to me, or my dad had it happen to him. And the more you talked about it, the more you became open with it, you'd find little pieces of stuff. And people say different things. Oh, yeah, those are witches, and they're from Africa, and they're African witches. And wow, really? Is that what it was? Like, just really something that early in life that stuck with me to ask the deeper questions at sleepovers, at the dinner table if I could, and that really continued my peek into the realms unseen, into the spirit world, and in high school and things like that, getting into darker music and um, the things they sing about. A lot of times it's Satanic Bible or Aleister Crowley and those kind of things. So as someone who had a piece of it, like I knew something existed, didn't know what it was. I was kind of tapping into the darker stuff. Um, just as a kid, like not really nothing crazy, just reading it, just doing it as, you know, the stigma that comes with it kind of thing. And I ended up going to a prayer meeting. I think I was 13. Somebody asked me to come to a prayer meeting, and it was my older brother type in my life that we were living with, him and his dad, and he was about 12 years older than me. And he'd always invite me to go to church. He'd always invite me to go to prayer meetings. I didn't want to go, and never was like, I'm not into that. And then he asked me again to go to a prayer meeting like on a Thursday night, and I was like, nah, I don't want to go. He's like, well, you might like this prayer meeting. I was like, why? He said, well, there's going to be a prophet there. And I was like, what's a prophet? He said, a prophet is kind of like a Christian psychic. And like, as me being into like the supernatural, I was like, shoot, I'll come. So he kind of won me over with the spiritual side of the Bible, like, and I went and checked it out, and that was in 1998, and I went to this prayer meeting and just saw these people in this little apartment crammed in there, and they had beautiful worship music on, and their hands were raised and their eyes were closed, and they were like in a different world. Like they were like almost like having an out of body experience, because they were just, there was peace in the atmosphere, and they wasn't there. They were like somewhere else. And I just felt that beauty that I had never felt before, and I experienced it in that room. And somebody came and sat down on a couch next to me and asked me if I wanted to ask Jesus to forgive me of my sins. And at the age of 13, I'm like, I don't want him not to forgive me, for sure. Like, I don't want him, like, no. So he led me in this prayer, and I really meant it, to ask Jesus to come into my life and forgive me and to make him the Lord of my life. And I prayed that prayer, but when I did, like, something happened. Like, I felt this tremendous heat enter my body, and I just started weeping, and I felt it just going through me, cleansing me, man. Like, all of the wrong that I had ever done was just fire. It felt euphoric. I was shaking, and I just prayed a prayer, and I really meant it. And this guy prayed with me, and it was just this magical, otherworldly experience, better than any high. And I was 13, experiencing that. Got into the church for the summer because I had just moved to a new city, and all I knew was my Christian friend and all the Christians he introduced me to. So we were going to church and prayer meetings like all the time, and it was like, it was high intensity, you know what I'm saying? It's like what we did, and other people would have that same experience, and I would have it every time that I would pray. Like, I would be able to feel that fire and that beauty. But school started back after summer, went to school, and as a 13-year-old and freshman, I immediately fell into the wrong crowd again, like the people that was into the drugs and the music and that kind of. I met new friends like instantly, and just kind of started falling away. Met a warlock at a party who was an older guy who was teaching everybody like magic and stuff, and piqued that interest. Wow, I know God's real, right? I had this experience with God. I've had experience with darkness, and I'm even more into the darkness now because I've been a Christian. So I'm kind of even rebelling from the beautiful people and those kind of things, And so really took to the warlock and just picked his brain. We'd be over there drinking and hanging out, and I'd pick his brain all night. Stories, and he knows all the books and how to summon spirits and stuff. But this guy was the real deal. Like, you have a lot of people who claim to have power and claim to all this stuff, but it's just theology, just like a Christian who talks about Jesus. It's just something they learned. It was something that was passed down, or they read it in a book. But this guy, like, he could summon an elemental and do a parlor trick if he wanted to. He wouldn't do it because it had consequences, right? And his magic, he took it serious. That's what gave him the
Would you
ability to do
consider
that.
that alchemy?
Um, in a sense, yeah, because you're combining elements. You're combining ether, an etheric being, or creating an etheric being, and combining it with fire, air, water, whatever it is that you make this entity out of. And he had a binding spell on his belongings that I stole something from him a few years into knowing him. I stole something from him, and he had a spell on his belongings, and we were over there when the thing was returned to him. I thought that me and my cousin was over there. I thought I was going to get beat up because they were in gang activity and like real crazy, like reading the Bible upside down and learning the stack. And King David is, it was insane gangster disciple folk. Like it was real deal. Um, and there was a lot of older guys who were over there, and they all stood up one at a time, walked to the back of the room. I thought they were going to get bats and stuff. I didn't know what was going on. As soon as the last one went, it was like 5, 6 of them, and a whole house, inside and outside, full of just teenagers partying, drinking, and hanging out. And as soon as the last one left, I got up with my cousin and said, "We got to go now." He didn't know why. I was like, "We got to go now." They found the stuff that I've been stealing from all of these people, really. And we get up, go outside. Some guy takes us down the road to stay with my girlfriend in her treehouse where we had stayed, I think, the night before. Um, anyway, we're hanging out behind the bushes, trying to make that beeline for her treehouse without her parents seeing. And there's this light that's just kind of hovering in the field, and it looked like somebody with a flashlight. So we're just like, we don't want to get seen. So we're watching it. And it just never goes away. It's like 45 minutes, and it's just this light just going through. And we're like, well, let's go around this angle. So we start going around the tree line, and there's this big open field. And when we get to the field, out of nowhere, this being appears, and I describe it looked like an 8-foot tall camel, darker than the blackest of night, ran past me and my cousin, screamed, knocked us both on the ground, and disappeared, vanished into the thin air when it passed us. Freaked me out, freaked him out. We got up and we ran to the treehouse. But then, that experience, instead of like scaring you away from it, it really, I knew that it was real. You know what I'm saying? I knew that, okay, I can get good enough where I can summon whatever that was. Like I want to be able to summon that thing and have it go pay my enemies a visit in the middle of the night, like that kind of stuff. And so it led me deeper into it, so much so that I did every seance, every ritual, all of the books I can get my hands on, and the scarier ones the better, but none of them worked until I say they all worked. Something happened, and after doing all of that for a couple months, and some kind of a portal seemed to open up in my mind, and I'd be pulled in and out of trances. And I'd just be sitting in mid-conversation with my girlfriend at the time and watching television or talking to her, and I'd just go blank, and I'd pause, and I'd go somewhere else, and I'd see all of these faces and shapes and colors and voices, and they're speaking in foreign languages, and all at the same time. And I'm just stuck, and my heart's beating really fast. I turn pale, and I quit breathing. And I'm just in no hard drugs, nothing, just mid-conversation, I'm somewhere else. And then my health started to go down bad. I started coughing up blood every day, started hearing voices, started hearing things, like psychic abilities went from 0 to 100. I knew things about people, but it was at 100. There was no throttle, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good. It was scary. Everybody was looking at me. It's like going schizophrenic, like sick, really sick. And so it only lasted a couple days. I don't know how long it was, a week or two. It wasn't long at all because I couldn't handle it. And it kept happening. And I was like, I remembered being a Christian, you know, a couple years before. I remember those prayer meetings and the beauty and that bliss and this peace and being able to pray and just close my eyes and like feel this loving energy immediately with me when I just simply say hello, how are you, you know, and it's there. And I was so far removed from that. I was at rock bottom. I felt like these entities were trying to take my mind from me. So um, I had a fit one night and asked my girlfriend to pray with me. We were living in New Orleans at the time. She prayed, and just that I'll feel better. Dear God, make him feel better. Like help Derek, you know. Woke up the next day feeling a little bit better and just went straight to my altars and all the paraphernalia that I could, just threw it all in the garbage and got rid of it all. Because I just like told her I got to get my life back on track with God. I'm not following Satan anymore. Any of this stuff, I'm going crazy. I need Christ in my life. Called all the churches I could in the phone book, left messages on the answer machine telling them I thought I was demon possessed and I needed somebody to pray with me. It was like 15 churches or whatever. One church called me back, and the pastor ended up coming to my house to pray with me, and ended up coming like pick us up and take us to church and stuff like that. So that was in September, on September 7th of 2000. So 22 years that I've been walking with Christ, and you know, it definitely took a long time to like get out of it. There was like instant peace and instant hope. Like, yeah, I'm back. Like, God is with me now. You guys are going to be in trouble, you know, to those spirits. Like, you know.
That's great, man. You know what? While you were talking, I thought of something. You know how you were talking about the elements, the four elements, earth, air, fire, water, right?
Yeah.
Then the ether, the spirit, and you combine it sometimes. Would you say that the story of Adam being created from the dirt and God breathing life into him would literally be that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Everything is. Everything is. It's the creation of an entity. If you don't create it, if you don't give it a body and a name and a commandment, like you have to give it a commandment. Like whatever Adam is, whatever Adam was, whatever Eve was, whatever Cain was. They all had different rules. They had different commandments, and they could do different things. They were created with different purposes. So even with these elementals, this was created with a purpose. Like you are to protect. That's all you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to talk to nobody. You're not supposed to go and torment the neighbors tonight, because if you do, I got to pay for that because I'm your father. I created you. It's the same rules, man. The same rules of engagement. When you start a business, you're creating an entity, and you have to get, when you understand this and you go read the Bible, there's whole new levels to it. You got the Sumerian levels. I just watched a documentary just with the same stuff the other day on Solomonic magic, about when you bring a spirit in and you have to put it in something and you have to give it a parameter and give it commands and stuff. It's like, and then if it breaks the commands, then it's in trouble. So hence the creation of whatever we are, or whoever those commandments were for to begin with, and they broke those commandments, and now you're running amok, you know. Yeah, but that, just like all of the theology and the astral theology, these are universal principles that govern creation, and there's levels to you literally your children that you like. Our offspring, they have a seed goes into the womb and takes, and then over time a body is formed around it, and you'll find that terminology all throughout the scriptures. Abraham, for sure, they're creating people, they're creating different races, they're creating different types of hybrids. Even all of that terminology is in the scriptures, and it's once you can understand it, that principle, then you apply it and you'll see it everywhere. If it's truth, if it's not truth, it's not going to be true anywhere. But if there's any truth to it, it's true on all of those planes of existence.
What I've been trying to do lately, or what I have, is I recently did a couple videos on my YouTube channel called What is God? And people came back to me and they're like, yeah, that's pantheism. And I was like, really? I was like, I didn't know it had a name. This is just what I believed in. So I've been reading the Bible astrotheologically and pantheistically, as we are all one, basically. But what really gets me is that you're the one that kind of opened my eyes that it just wasn't astrotheological. Okay, because that's a rabbit hole that blows your mind at first, and then you're like, this is the truth, but there's more than that. I always have this graphic that I show that says the scriptures are metaphysical, astrological, anatomical, alchemical, spiritual, esoteric, and mythology. Those are known as the 7 sciences, but it's so much more than that. It's also etymology. It's numerology. Literally, I've been studying astrotheology for 10 years now, going on 11. And I've been teaching it for maybe 2.25 years. Mm-hmm. I'm not even done with it. There is so much to open up. It is literally impossible to understand every angle of the book. Yeah. It is literally impossible. Yeah. At one point we were talking about it and you were like, you got the astrotheological. I've got this angle. I have a friend that's a numerologist that's broken down some beautiful stuff. We should put people together and we should
it's a lot of work, but I want to do it, man. I really
we should take like one book of the Bible and I'll break it down astrotheological. You break it down the way you do. We'll get the other people to get the other sciences, and then we'll just do an episode where we could just. There's more to learn about the Bible than you can do in one lifetime, and that is the part that I'm struggling with right now.
That's the part that humbles you, And so exactly. Christians don't know that. Christians, there's only one literal interpretation, and if you deviate from the literal interpretation, you're wrong. And it's like, how arrogant, how prideful.
Yeah, how prideful. It's true.
But like you said, if you're not a physicist, you don't know, and so you really can't blame them. They're only doing like that part that they have to this magical text is magical. And it means so much to them that they base not only their life on it, but their afterlife. So you really can't fault them. It is a ignorance is bliss kind of thing. It is a don't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because now you'll be like the gods. Now you'll know. Now you'll be responsible.
I think the smartest people in the world know that they don't know shit.
Yeah,
that's a sign. Like it humbles you. It humbles you. You can't. You literally can't understand. And if you read the Bible literally, that's the problem. Most people just read it literally. And it sounds like something someone 2,000 years ago wrote, and then, Odin pulled out and came on the floor and God didn't like it. And then he was dead. And you're like, where's the spirituality in that? It's so deep. Yeah. And what I try and do is just because I'm so good at the astrotheological part, I'm getting really good at it. I'm just trying to share that with people. And then when people finally accept it, I'm like, you don't understand. There's so much more to it, So let me ask you a question about your music. This actually just came to my mind. Okay. Well, first I have to ask, do you hear the beat first? Do you write the hook first? Do you have a process?
I like to find a beat that because the beat's going to communicate with you. The music is like, okay, this is like what I'm at least going to start off with. So the beat and the music. But when the lyrics come, you kind of got to write them, So many times in the past, anyway, the lyrics will just start coming to me, and it's like, as long as you got a piece of it, then you can unfold it, and I remember like the ones that come to you are the best, mm-hmm. and actually having to sit down. You may not have a whole song come to you, but when it comes to you, you got to write it down, just like this knowledge and downloads and information, that epiphanies that tie together. You got to write it down, or you forget it, or it'd be given to somebody else. There's that. So yeah, kind of both ways.
Okay. I got another question for you. We know that when you physically sleep with someone, when you get to the level that you understand that you're imprinting on each other, and that is something that you carry forever, not just in your mind, but mm-hmm. in your aura and everything. So when you decide to make a song with someone, how do you decide who to sleep with on that track?
Well, and me, I have a producer in my mind. Like I'm a visionary, so I can, if I hear a beat, I've got like a roster in my head of artists that I have access to. Or if I don't have access to, we'll try to get access to and see what it costs. And so um, that was straight up, and so you rank these artists in your head, and it's like, oh, I need him. And then other people will be like, let me get on the song with you. And I'm like, well, you don't know this. You can't go there with us. Like, you
Yeah.
can't. Like, if I do a Christian song about how much I love God, like, what get you on that one? And there's nothing wrong with that. Those songs are powerful in and of themselves.
Right.
But when we're going deep, we're going on a journey. And there's been a few times where, people need help, or we make it work for the most part, though. It's only a couple where people couldn't keep up or whatever. So, yeah.
That's freaking.
And there've been like experiences, man. Like, that. Like, if you listen to my music, it's a journey. Like, and then to be able to, back in the day, like really go eclectic and deep, just like you would put together a presentation of the imagery and what images should I use. Like, that was and still is fun, because I got something in my head, and I'm about ready to step out, whether I'm going to be just making videos on teachings on this
Right.
stuff, or presentations with the PowerPoint, like you're doing.
Right. Right.
Because some of this stuff that we're going to be teaching, and that you're going to be teaching, and you already are, there's no imagery for it,
Right.
because nobody knew what it looked like. So you have to have a heart and a mind that's open to be a visionary, to read this and like, hold on, why aren't there any images of this scene? Like,
Right.
this scene is amazing. So do you hire somebody? Because with these interpretations of the Bible, the whole, not just the Bible, everything, we were
Right.
tricked with images.
Right.
They showed us an image. They read the text about um, whatever. Like, you doing the same thing when you're able to read that text and then show Leo and or the
Yeah.
four living creatures. I mean, how
Yeah.
many Christians to this day believe that the four living creatures are these monsters that
Yeah.
live in the heavens and govern the heavens?
And they
Well,
show
they
you
are.
in like the picture of Ezekiel's wheel.
Yeah,
They talk about it
that's how he got us.
in Revelation. It's absolutely.
And so I want to be able to teach it and show it with the images too. I've done it with the rap music. Like, that's a journey, it's a thing. But listen, your teachings are a journey. Any of this stuff is a
Right.
journey. But
They say
some
you
of the
learn the best by teaching. They say you learn the best by teaching,
Hmm.
and I find that true.
it's it's an honor. It's not a small thing. And people, oh, you're a false prophet, you're gonna be judged. Listen, I judge myself. Like, this is a high honor that I get to do this. So I want to do it. I want to.
I didn't send this to you yet, but I got this comment today. I have to read it to you.
Go ahead.
I did a presentation with Rex on the Leak Project. It was my intro to astrotheology one. Okay.
Yeah.
And this guy says to me, he didn't say it to me, but he said it on the comment section. He literally goes, after watching my whole presentation, the 2-hour one, he goes, I can't even imagine what this guy's judgment is going to be.
Yeah.
Some people are just not ready for it, So
Well,
because you're such, yeah. Sorry, go on.
Listen, we bring the judgment to the now. I know we talked about this once before, but like, the stars are already judging you. You're already being, once you know that, these Christians are putting these prophecies because they were tricked. When you die, you'll be judged. No, the scripture also says, if I judge myself, God can't judge me, because I'm judging myself, and I'm hard on myself already. That's what the Satan adversary character is anyway. Once you welcome what he is here to try you.
Yeah.
We're judging ourselves, and if Christians would do that, man, they would have nothing to fear in whatever afterlife is to come, because the word, I'm gonna give you this. Write this down. The word sincerity.
Yeah.
Sincerity. I was reading it the other day in, I believe it was 2 Corinthians, and Paul is like, we're not as those who corrupt the word of God and who do it for selfish gain, and we're not like those guys, like the wicked. But we are as those who are of sincerity and of sincere heart. And I'm breaking down all the etymology on all the words I read now. I can't even skip sincerity. Like, oh, it just means we do it and we just, we're sincere. No, no, no. What does that word mean? And you trace the etymology back to the Greek, and really in the Strong's Concordance, it tells you that word means one who has been tried and judged by the sun, by the rays of the sun. We are the children who stand with clean hands and an open heart in the sunlight. And you are the ones who are operating in darkness and in sin and in disobedience. You can't stand in the light because you'll die, because the sun is judgment.
Don't Christians also go out as the sun's coming up and put their hands up like this?
The early ones did, for sure. Yeah, I do it. I try to do it. I've been a little bit depressed, to be honest with you, because we've had nothing but rain for like almost 3 weeks, and I had gotten into this really just beautiful meditation, and to go out and to greet the sun when it rises, and to make friends with the birds. I've been feeding the birds. It's really beautiful, but I'll just sit in the sun the different hours of the day and let it cleanse me, let it purify me, let it speak to me, let me speak to it, tell it thank you for its life. The same way you'll talk to God. Like, if you're not gonna, you don't have the right. This is some Jordan Max. A lot of this Jordan Maxwell stuff's coming full circle, man. Like,
Yeah.
I could handle it. And I said in my interviews, there were times that the Christian part of me could not handle it, and I'm still learning and still watching Maxwell stuff, and I'm just now able, because it's so much. It's so much. You have to just digest what you can, and all the other stuff is like, whatever. Tell me more UFO stuff, or tell me more whatever. But it's all coming full circle to make sense, and it has to. It has to.
When I do podcasts, people sometimes they're like, "This is a young Jordan Maxwell," and I'm like, "I appreciate the thought, but no, I'm not." I'm like, "That man pioneered it. Not only did that man pioneer it, not only was he kind and humble and just he was just such a great person to know personally. He did all of this without the internet. He would go to the library with books and make the connections. Whereas I'm like, what stars in Scorpio? And then it just pulls it up and then I find it. You know what I mean?
There's no excuse. Like, when you're talking about judgment, it's like, I don't know any better. I mean, dude, you have limitless information at your fingertips. You just gotta look a little bit, and you'll find it in a book, in a somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, like, but I champion everything Jordan did, but we are, to carry that torch to the next level. There's things that, all of the predecessors in the scriptures, like, they could only go so far, and then they had to hand the torch over.
Correct.
Yeah, and so because there's places that we're already going. Jordan's with us for sure. Like, even more, like, when you give up your shell and you go into the earth, you give up everything. Now it's all in the Akashic. Like, it's all there. Everything that you embodied and you accompanied. And once we honor that and we position ourselves to be able to handle it and carry it with, I'd say, with dignity and with respect, then we're blessed to take it from one place to another. As Moses couldn't go into the promised land because he used his magic, if you will, out of anger.
On the rock.
And he was, as long as he used it a certain type of way, he could operate in it. But once he did it out of anger and he did it with to the rock or whatever, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, where we're going, you're not going to be, you're like, this is your time. You can watch us.
He hands it over to Joshua.
You can watch us from afar, and you can go to the mountain and die and be taken back up to your people. And he did that. And so he hands it over to Joshua. I mean, Elijah hands it down to Elisha, David, Solomon, Jesus, his disciples, their 70 disciples, to whoever it reaches today. Like, it's always from one hand to the next. And there's just been some things that I can see that I'm just like, I'm glad that I can see that I couldn't have seen any other time. This all a process. It's a process. And Jordan didn't see it. He had like so much, but he still has certain blinders on because of the hurt, because of the rejection, because of his livelihood stolen from him. Like these things mess you up, and if you can't come back like that, like you're wounded. And so he was wounded, and we all are to different degrees. That's why we need each other.
Right.
And it's a privilege to be able to try to carry his word.
I
To
just remember what happened with him and Santos when I first learned about this stuff 10 years ago, and look where I am now with it. I hope that my work inspires someone and takes them out of whatever rut they are in, or questions. I don't talk to people who have their minds made up. I don't have any desire to do that, because you know what, you do you, boo boo. I have no issue with that. Do
yeah,
you?
yeah,
I talk to people who are lost, who are confused. I
yeah,
talk to people who are looking for answers to make sense. And I'm like, look, I have a little piece of the puzzle.
yeah,
I'm taking it pretty far. The one thing that I do that Jordan and Santos never did was I found a way to almost commercialize it, in a book series, in a fiction book series, kind of like what Jules Verne did, or George Orwell did, or Aldous Huxley did. What they did, to try and bring it to people in a different way, because it kind of slowly creeps into your mind. When you're reading my books, you're like, that can't be real. And then you look it up and you're like, oh, okay. And then, I'm just approaching it a different way right now. And I know you do too. But I hope to inspire people to dig for themselves. That's all I care about.
yeah,
That's all I really care about. Um,
yeah. If
but
I've
let me,
held anything back or have been holding back, it is in the hopes and the desire that I'm sprinkling enough seeds to make people ask more questions or dig for themselves. I
yeah,
mean, that's where that's where leadership comes in, because the honest truth is that most people aren't, even though they mean well and they want to. Like you have to train yourself. You got to train yourself on so many things to read. This stuff didn't come overnight. Like
yeah,
this is a lifetime of
yeah.
work, and not just our work, but also the work of people that other people will never know. You'll never hear their names.
And
Um,
one of the most
so
one of the most important things that I've got to say, that I've learned from seeing the brightest minds that I know, that I try and bring all you guys on my channel. One thing that you guys have to know is that when you start to learn some of the truth that is out there, you go through the 5 stages of grief. Okay, you will go through the 5 stages of grief, which usually end in your complete and total mental breakdown or complete destruction, and then from that you are rebuilt like the phoenix.
mhm.
That's usually what happens. The people that shine the hardest, that do this kind of stuff,
Yeah,
they have their paradigm shifted, because the world is not set up to teach you this kind of stuff. The world doesn't want you to know this stuff. You're 4 years old, you see an entity. You don't realize that at 4 years old, your pineal gland isn't calcified yet, and that you damn well might have been seeing an entity. Cats can. Cats always do.
yeah,
Children, you always look up and you're like, Grandpa. Or, they do things like, you take them seriously. Because you know what? Entities will come and visit you in one of two things. They will visit you in a friendly body that you recognize, like Jesus. That's why so many people see Jesus or Mary,
yeah.
because they recognize that as their safe space.
Hmm.
But the negative entities also will come, and they will come visit you, and they will come visit you as something that you're horrified about. And if you read Isaiah 45:7, which I quote all the time, it'll say, I, the Lord, create the light and the dark. I create the good and the evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. You have to understand that the idea of God is everything. Okay? The idea of God is everything. When you realize that God is everything, and then you hear a phrase in the book of Thomas where Jesus says, split a piece of wood and I'm there,
Hmm.
turn over a stone and you'll find me. When you realize God is everything, that makes sense.
Yeah,
When you hear Jesus say, um, what you've done for the least of my brothers, you've also done for me. If we're all
exactly.
one, that makes sense. You have to read it that way.
Yep.
It's not just something well-wishing like, oh, he's such an empath. No, it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
You have to understand is that everything is connected.
Right.
Everything, the good and the evil. And people aren't ready to talk about the fact that God
Yeah.
includes evil. People aren't ready for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gotta have you have to have it. It's the part of the game. It's like it's you like light isn't light without darkness. Like it is yin and yang. It's duality, and it exists, and it is God. But there are those people who I've just been talking about this. They're like, they find that out, and they're like, yeah, it's just duality, man. You're gonna have light and darkness. Quit trying to just be all light or whatever. It's like, no, like I know that darkness goes deep. Obviously, I've been there. Um, we start out in yin yang, right? But I want my bubble to be all white. I just do. Cause it's been all black. There was a part of me
Right.
that was just a ruthless young man, and it was majority like that yin yang that's down the middle, and I think we all start off there. And it's duality. It is in everything. Everything has a counterpart. It is the seven hermetic principles. It is the angels and the demons that you won't have a demon without have a correlating angel, or vice versa. You
Right.
can't have up without down, north
I mean,
without
Jesus
south.
Christ, the planets, the stars. They're always binary.
So
They're always in binary. So
yeah,
I've
and
got
they all
yeah,
complement each other. They work together. It's like, the sun. You know this. The sun going through the 12 hours of the day governing, and then as it goes into the underworld and makes that journey,
yeah,
at 12 o'clock noon is where the sun is at its highest. At 12 midnight, the sun is at its lowest. It's made its way to the bottom, and you can't even see it. The night is dark, is
right,
at its darkest, and but like Christ said, as the rising of the sun is the setting of the same. His mercies are new every morning, and he just comes back around and is faithful, and it is the sun. The sun
right,
is definitely one of God's. If it's not God, it's one of God's gods. Let's put it. It's
right.
which is a governor. It's Jesus. It's one of his governors. It's his mighty governor that if it doesn't exist, you die. We don't exist as humans without that God.
Right.
Whatever that God is has many different names,
Right.
honestly. So
So let me ask you one more question, and we're going to wrap it up. Um, because everybody just has to first tell everyone where you're at.
I'm in Alabama. So
No, no, not where you're at. I meant online.
TruthSeekah.com, Truth SEEKAH.com. I do so much, but everything's there, and every social media platform. So
Okay. And look at his music on YouTube. The just the esotericism is mind blowing. My question to you is this: because you're such a syncretist with esotericism, it's either one of two things: either all your albums are concept albums, or you can't do a concept album. Which one is it?
can't do it. Can't do it. It's like I don't know. I think maybe just I've tried. Like I've kind of done. Like I did a 7 song EP, Colors, and it was 7 songs, each one dedicated to a degree of each of the 7 chakras. Right, started from the root, going up to the crown, and so each song. So in a sense, that's a concept album. I did another album right after that called ESP. It was just 4 tracks, 5 tracks, whatever, just about extrasensory perception, and there was just so those are concept albums, I guess. But it's stuff I've said on other. It's still esoteric, spiritual, mystical, out of body. But trying to stay a little bit more focused. You know what I'm saying? So like, this song is about seeing in the spirit. This
Right.
song is about hearing in the spirit.
Mhm.
Kind of thing.
So my last question to you: if my listeners were to go on YouTube and look you up, what do you think? What would a good song for them to start off be? And I know you have so many, but like,
Yeah,
just give us one of your favorites. You like the beat, you like what you said in it, you like the hooks. What would you say they should listen to?
you're right. So many voices. I look up the song "Voices" featuring Loke Saint. Any Loke Saint feature is good that we've done, but voices. If I have to give you one, because there is so many that are just near and dear to my
Sure.
heart and take you on a journey. But voices is the first one that comes to mind.
I saw that you had Tahuti Moss on yours.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I was blown away by his stuff. I looked up the word Tahuti and I was like, that's what it means, really?
so
So I'm now calling one of my characters at the end of book 9 that. I'm not going to explain anything more than that, but
so
dude,
yeah, giving roses. Let me just drop some roses on him. Like so, he's with LCOB with Rasul, right? In their group, Lost Children of Babylon, which was the esoteric first esoteric rap group I found that, I mean, I just dove head over heels for those guys, and to be like eventually be like on albums and could be considered one of those guys. That was a huge honor. But
Yeah.
he went by Tahuti went by Richard Raw. Don't get those mixed up, because people do, with Tahuti that goes on Killer Priest's podcast. That's a different Tahuti. But he was Richard Raw in LCOB, and the guy's a wordsmith. He freaking knows all of those texts. He's amazing. So Richard Raw, but then like outside of LCOB, at the end he created another character to kind of like channel, to really try to channel Tahuti as a lyricist. And the first feature I got from him as Richard, well, as Tahuti, we went by that name, but he was still Richard. But he sent the verse back to me, and he's like, I'm listening to it, and he's like rapping from like Satan's perspective. And I'm listening, I'm like, because I'm still Christian, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, this guy's channeling Satan on my song. Like, it's a dope verse though, and it makes sense, but he's like just rapping it from Satan's perspective. He's like, I made a deal with God over the life of Job. Give me the I'll give you the world, just give me your soul. And he's just like, I've killed Africans by the millions, did this with reptilians. And I'm like, it's like, this is deep kind of stuff. But his Tahuti character, and he's like rapping from that perspective, and that is a concept, right? To be able to put yourself
What's that
in
song
somebody's
called
shoes.
so we can look it up?
That is I think it's Dreams.
Dreams?
Dreams. TruthSeekah, Tahuti Mos. Yeah. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. But little did I know that he was doing that on other, songs too. Just didn't, I don't know if it was I don't know why he chose Satan, on my album or whatever, but, it fit though. It fit. It was like, he's like, I even asked Judas to give you a kiss, and like, it's pretty deep.
I gotta check this out now.
When you can, so that's kind of with my Satan character, like,
Yeah.
you can kind of step out of, you can say things, you can say truths, deep truths, as this character that you couldn't say as TruthSeekah, Micah Dank, or Richard Raw,
Yeah. Truth, man. It's always so good to get to talk to you, man.
Yeah, we got to talk more, man, because we got to compare notes, dude, because I got so much, even with the astrology stuff and like the star beings coming down, and man, it's wild in the Bible. Like, we gotta get together and compare notes.
Sounds good, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. Everybody that's listening, please check him out. It's really good. It's really good stuff. The music is really good. I just can't say enough nice things. Like, people have to understand, the people that I bring on my channel are the people that completely blow my mind. I don't want to do a podcast. I'm being honest.
You gotta even be careful calling it interviews too, because people will soon jump into this.
Yeah.
Hey, you're only supposed to ask questions. Like, no, this is a conversation, man. This is friends,
Yeah, I hear you. All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And one more time, where can people find you?
TruthSeekah.com. I'm real active on Facebook right now. Facebook, I've tapped into the algorithms. Hit me up on there. All social media platforms.
Beautiful.